I want to learn what your company means. What are you standing for? What will you stand up for? What will you stand up against? You know, bring me into the process of creating the product. Show me the production facility. Show me the people that are actually packing the envelopes and putting the packaging together. Show me who you are.
Mike is awesome. Met him through a friend who will probably be on here too shortly. But he, you know, when he and I were talking, and he was describing to me a lot of the work he's done with artists and performers like Kiss. We were talking about the parallels. You know, one just between entrepreneurship and being an artist. There's often a passion that drives you, you know, to go do what you do best, and then a lot of the things that he's done to help build brands are a lot of the things that we all are doing or want to do to help build brands. So I think he's got some incredible insights that are translate well beyond just the performer world and into our world, both just as how we build a personal brand, you know, what we might put on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, and then what we might do with our businesses as well to build that brand.
There you go. Thank you, Randy. And it's a pleasure to virtually meet everybody. I have, I guess you could say, an interesting story, an interesting background. I'm a Kiss fan. I was a Kiss fan since 1976. And like all of us, whatever you're a fan of, you've always had dreams of doing something with them, officially working for them, helping them, whatever it might be. And in my case, that dream actually came true. And not because I formally sat down and said, I'm going to do this, but because I followed my passion, and my passion was recognized, and my passion allowed that to happen. So I'll try and keep my backstory real short here, because I could talk about the backstory for an hour alone. I built my first website in 1995, which is literally the dark ages of the internet. It's before Google existed, before Amazon existed. Actually, Amazon might have been there right about that time, but they literally only sold books. Yahoo didn't exist. No social media existed. It wasn't even a thought in anybody's eyes. I built a website because I wanted to learn how to program in this language called HTML, because I worked for a home improvement company in the Chicagoland area managing their advertising network. So it was for my job that I wanted to learn how to use this new programming language. And if I was going to teach myself, I wanted to do it in something I loved, and that was the band Kiss. So I built a website that launched in 1995. It was the 5th website on the internet about Kiss. And the timing, I think as entrepreneurs, we understand timing, right place, right time is ever so critical to everything. 1996, Kiss launched their reunion tour. They put the makeup back on, got the original band back together, and did a world tour. It was the #1 selling tour of the year worldwide. So I was at the right place at the right time. I'd been working in and out of the music business, helping other people out. So I understood the business. I understood their management company. I knew them. So I just started asking them for news material. I've got this website, and they cooperated, because I was not the crazy fan, as we so like to speak about in the industry, the crazy fan who's only interested in meeting the band. That wasn't my goal. My goal was just to build a website to share information. Fast forward from 1995 to 1998, and I come back. I'm now working for Montgomery Ward's in downtown Chicago, managing their advertising network. And I come back, and I've got a voicemail message from Gene Simmons on my machine at home. If you remember back when your voicemail was a little tape player connected to your telephone. And it basically said, Mike, This is Gene Simmons. I've got a business proposition for you. Would you please give me a call back? You know, heart starts pounding when you've got something like that left, a message like that left for you. I call him back and he's like, we're building a website. Would you like to build this website for us? Mike, I can't promise you anything. I'm going to open a door for you. What's on the other side of that door? I don't know. And I'm not promising you what's on that other side of the door. But it's an opportunity for you to walk through that door and see what happens. And, you know, to me, that just sort of sums up everything about being an entrepreneur. It's like there's a door, you don't know what's on the other side, but you make that tough decision to walk through that door and make the best of it. And I did. And 2 months later, I was hired and I was being moved from Chicago to San Francisco, where I started building the KISS website. They had no website. This was 1998. Few people had websites. It was really just starting to explode at that point in time. And I was living my dream. As I told people, I was a paid fan. I was a fan of the band, but I was being paid to hang out with them, go to their shows, take photos, meet the fans, and just live the life of a fan as all fans around the world would want. And it was an incredible experience. Fast forward to a number of years ago, I launched my own business here, Michael Brandvold Marketing, which is an internet marketing and digital strategy company. And I wrote an ebook to market myself, because ebooks are great for generating email addresses and all sorts of other marketing collateral. It was called KISS School of Marketing, 11 Lessons I Learned While Working with KISS. And this was a business perspective on KISS, not the crazy being a fan, that sort of stuff. This was what were business lessons that anybody in any business could take away from KISS. You don't have to love KISS. You don't even have to you don't have to have ever listened to KISS, but there's great business lessons that they had here. And I'll share a couple of these lessons with you. So one of the lessons that always struck me about KISS, and in general, anybody who's worked in the music industry, has always been love me or hate me, just spell my name right. And at the end of the day, in this modern age, that actually means love me or hate me, just make sure you get my URL right. Because you don't care, at the end of the day, you do not care if somebody loves you or hates you. Both those emotions mean they care about you to some extent. And it's a love-hate relationship is very close. You can easily drive somebody from hating you to loving you and loving you to hating you. So make sure they spell your name right so they always know who you are. But what goes along with this is a little extension of love me or hate me, but get out of the middle of the road. It's those people in the middle of the road who just don't care. Those are the ones you're most concerned with. Just get out of the middle of the road. Because it's the people in the middle who have no emotions, no opinions. They don't care about you. You mean nothing to them. Those are the people you want to move to one side or the other. Ideally to love you, but there's nothing wrong if they hate you as well. You've got to learn to live with people who hate you, because one of the things you're going to learn is that you can't make all your customers / fans happy. It's impossible, absolutely impossible. And you will forever be chasing the customer's desires if all you're doing is making changes to make one customer happy or one customer group happy and alienating another customer and another customer group. At the end of the day, you have to make sure you are happy. It's your product, it's your business, it's your life, it's your name. You have to live with it forever. You need to be happy with it. And it's very hard, I think, to take that sort of an attitude because we all want everybody to like us. It's just natural. But you will quickly learn, especially in this day and age of social media, that's you can't do that. Somebody's going to hate you just for the sake that they can hate you for no legitimate reason. But this leads to another lesson that I so love, and it's a quote by George Bernard Shaw, but Gene Simmons has shared it so many times. The secret to success is to offend the greatest number of people. And when I say that to people, some people like, oh my God, you don't want to piss people off. And I'm like, no, stop and think about what that quote is saying. If you want to be successful, the more people you are offending, the more successful you will be, because that means there's a lot of people out there who have emotions and feelings and opinions about you. And if there's a lot of people that hate you, there's probably an equal, if not greater amount that are going to love you as well. So don't be afraid to piss people off. And I would add, don't go out of your way to deliberately piss people off. You know, that's a cheap marketing tactic, is to just post something that incites comments, incites response. You have to be true to what you're always saying online, because you're going to have to defend it. They're coming to talk to you about what you posted. And if you don't believe it, you're going to have a hard time defending it. So you have to always stand behind what you say. If your belief is something that's going to drive people crazy, but you believe it in your heart, stand by it. Step up, say it, and live with it, because that is who you are. You can't sugarcoat everything, especially in this day of the internet where everything is so transparent. Somebody can go back through a website history, Twitter history, Facebook history, and find an old post from 10 years ago that proves that that's not how you really think. You've got to be your true self. Another lesson, a real quick lesson I love is wait for the right time. And how this relates to Kiss is Kiss started in 1973. They took the makeup off in 1983. They put the makeup back on in 1996 and had a reunion. Through the 80s, it was not the original band. It was only Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and two other guys out of makeup. Still hugely successful, but a kind of a different band. And as soon as they took the makeup off, and they did that because they knew they needed to do that to continue their career, people were saying, well, when are you going to put the makeup back on? When are you getting together with the original four? When are you going to do a reunion? Through the entire 80s, that's all that was said to them. But they kept saying, no, we believe in what we're doing now. We're sticking to our guns. We're sticking to our guns. But they always knew in their back pocket, they had this card to play. A reunion, putting the makeup on, putting the big bombastic show back together. They waited for the right time. And how do you know when that right time is? That's sort of that magical trait that entrepreneurs hopefully have, when you just in your gut know. There isn't a special message that pops up and says, now's the time to do it. You just are going to know, now's the time to take my product live. Now's the time to take my business live. Now's the time to make a pivot in my business. 1996, all of a sudden, promoters sat down and were offering them tens of millions of dollars to get back together for a reunion. The money was right, the time was right, and if you know anything about the changing music industry, the music industry was changing dramatically in 1996. Dramatically. You had a change in musical styles. So what Kiss was doing was no longer popular. So it became really the perfect time for them to extend their career for another 10 years. Well, it's extended well beyond that because they're still in the midst of a tour right now, approaching 50 years as a band. But they understood to wait for that perfect aligning of all the stars, so to speak, and then make that move and pivot and put the makeup back on and change their career. Now, that does dramatically change their business because they went from being a active recording artist to basically a legacy artist who is paying homage to their history. And there's nothing wrong with that because they understood the changing dynamics and demographics of their fans. They understood that their fans now were reliving their memories from the 70s. They weren't trying to recreate them. They wanted to remember the first time they heard the song Beth at the drive-in theater with their boyfriend or girlfriend, the first time they ever saw Kiss. Memories and emotions were so critical to the success of that reunion tour because it brought everybody back to a time where they could smile, they could relive high school, they could relive grade school. So another lesson is it's all branding. And Gene Simmons has gone so far as to say Kiss is not a band, it's a brand. And I actually would agree with that. I would challenge most people, if you took the Kiss logo or the makeup and showed it to anybody, nearly anybody on this planet, they would probably understand who it is. They may know nothing about them. They may have never listened to them. They may have never seen them in concert, but they understand who it is. That's a pretty powerful brand. You know, that's up there with an Apple logo, a Disney logo, a Coke logo. That's pretty powerful. And the example I use to illustrate branding is a number of years ago, Gene Simmons had a reality show on the A&E network called Gene Simmons Family Jewels. And it ran for, I don't know, 4 or 5 seasons maybe. He would do a lot of press about the show. And the reporters would always sit down and go, so Gene, tell me about your reality show Family Jewels. And he would get a puzzled look on his face and answer the press back by saying, I'm not familiar with this show, Family Jewels. I'm familiar with a show called Gene Simmons Family Jewels. I've never heard of Family Jewels. So he always beat people over the head that it's the brand Gene Simmons Family Jewels. It's Gene Simmons. It's Kiss. So that's a really important, almost simple lesson that everybody can take away is it's all about branding, and you've got to be branding yourself all the time. Another quick lesson, when you've got a career of pushing 50 years, not everything you do is going to succeed. And as entrepreneurs, we know that. We know not every venture we take and follow is going to succeed. And that's the lesson. Not everything you do will succeed, and don't spend your life worrying about if something's going to succeed. Just move on. If something fails, no biggie. Take a lessons from it and move on to the next project and the next project and the next project. Because at the end of the day, people are going to remember your successes more than they're ever going to remember the failure from 20 years ago, from 10 years ago. That's stuff that just is fleeting. It disappears. They're going to always applaud you for what you succeeded on. So, my personal attitude is I don't sit back and worry too much. Well, can this succeed? Is this the right thing to do? If I feel it in my gut, if I love it, if it's my passion, I'm going for it. Might be too soon. It might be the wrong place, might be the wrong time. If it doesn't work, no big deal. What can I learn from it? And let me move on to the next venture, the next project. And, it's sort of that old analogy of just keep throwing stuff against the wall until you find something that sticks. And that's what you got to do. Gene loves to say, look at baseball players. The best baseball players in the world don't hit 1,000. They don't even hit 500. So think about it from that sense. this is a big lesson I learned from KISS watching them. And the lesson is treat the media with respect, because they are the ones who put you on the front page. And why I say this is because I saw this so many times where Paul Stanley would be doing an in-store appearance and there'd be 2,000 fans in line. But the local newspapers are out there and they're taking pictures of this event. And they want to get a good picture of Paul. He always took the time to stop and give them a good pose, to look at them, to smile, to give them an answer to a question, because he understood that tomorrow morning's media, tomorrow morning's newspaper, website is going to have that picture on the cover. Now, it can be a bad picture of you because you weren't paying attention and giving the media what they wanted, or it can be a great picture of you with a great headline because you showed them some love. And those are the people that keep coming back. If you treat the media wrong, the next time the media is going to not be so open to working with you. Oh, no, we aren't going to come out and cover that event. Oh, we're not going to do that. It's all about treating all of the people that surround you, your business, your career. You got to treat them with respect, because they are the ones that can help elevate you. They're also the ones that can help knock you down. Here's a good one. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it. People don't just sit down and offer you a great deal. You got to go out and ask for that deal. It's very rare that somebody just says, hey, I want to work with you and give you a bunch of money. You got to reach out and go find these people. And the little example I have is just before building the KISS website, Gene had reached out to me to ask me to help work on a book project he was putting together for KISS. And, I negotiated out what my retainer was going to be to do this. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, God, KISS is selling these $700 leather biker jackets, incredible jackets. As a fan, I'd love to have one. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to ask Gene if he could give me one as well. So I just said, Gene, will you also give me a leather jacket? He's like, yeah, no problem. He wouldn't have offered it to me. It wasn't even something we were discussing. I just said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask for it and I'm going to see if I can get what I want. So never be afraid to just go and ask. Ask somebody to put you on the website. Ask somebody to post your press release. Ask somebody to give you a review. You've got to ask. Very few people take it upon themselves to make that action unsolicited. You know what? And let me wrap up with this last one, and then we can open up to questions. Separate business and pleasure. And what that means is, Gene would give an example of, he will do business with anybody who wants to do good business with him. You can hate the band, but if you want to do business with him, that's fine. It's not about your personal tastes of the band. If you want to do a deal that's going to put $1 million in his pocket and you hate the band and have no desire to see them, he'll still do it because it's $1 million in his pocket. The other side of that coin is, just because your brother is doing something doesn't mean you necessarily give them the business if they're not qualified to do it. You've got to separate business and pleasure, because if you don't, it's going to be, you're going to have missed business opportunities, and you're going to probably end up having problems in your business if you bring in people who are not experienced, not interested, don't have the mindset, but it's just a friend, a buddy, it's the entourage sort of thing. What do they bring to the table other than they suck stuff out of you? They suck your attention, they suck your enthusiasm, they can suck the money out of you. So separating business and pleasure is so important. Never be afraid to do business with somebody who doesn't like your product if that deal is going to help your product. because they're doing the same thing. They're like, I don't like your product, but you know what? It's going to help my business because I'm going to be able to sell it in my store. So those are some of the lessons, and a quick rundown of my background. You know, I've worked with many artists, from Kiss to Madonna to Ozzy to Motley Crue to Britney Spears, Fleetwood Mac, Rod Stewart. They all have similar attitudes about business that Kiss do. Kiss is just very vocal about it. Kiss is right up front saying, we're doing this for the money. And some people get offended by that, but at the end of the day, my answer is, do any of us go to work for free? You know, we're all doing this for the money. We all want to be paid for doing what we love. So there's nothing wrong with just saying that out front and being true to yourself and being honest.
Just starting off, you know, when you work with an act or a group, or you know, even how you might translate this to business, and you want to go build the brand and build the identity, what kind of cadence do you lay out for someone as far as social media, creating content, you know, engaging with followers or fans? You know, how would you translate that to business of what's the right kind of cadence for someone to be authentic?
So yeah, it's a very good question, and I have these discussions all the time. The first thing I say is, we've got to be honest. You have to be honest in what we're posting and what we're saying. Whatever it is has to be true to you, the beliefs of you, the beliefs of the company, of the brand. People will see through you acting false online in a second. In my case, working with artists, it's also, I'm very clear. I'm not going to impersonate that artist. I'm not going to be the person online pretending to be Gene Simmons, posting as Gene Simmons. Because you have built such a trust with your customers that if they find out the person they've been interacting with is not truly the artist, not truly the business, not truly the CEO, you've lost and destroyed that trust in them. How can they believe anything you say now? Because that's not really the CEO posting. That was an intern posting. The words, and let me be clear here, the person making the post doesn't have to be the CEO. The words being posted have to be the CEO. The replies have to be the CEO. They can dictate and give it to somebody else to do it, but you can't start talking on behalf of people. The other thing and this is really important in this day and age, is I'm like, all right, so you've got to decide right up front a couple things. What are the boundaries you're not going to cross? When it comes to social media, what won't you post about? And one example is, one of my clients is an 1980s MTV star by the name of Greg Kinn. And he said, listen, I'm open to posting anything and everything, but my daughter told me she doesn't want to be mentioned. I'm like, that's fine. I've got no problem with that. I'm not going to talk you out of that. I want to know those limits now, because when you accidentally cross that line, it's too late. It's out there. You can't take anything back off of the internet. So setting those limits, I won't talk about family. I won't talk about where I live. I won't talk about my favorite restaurant, whatever it might be. Make sure you understand those boundaries first and foremost. And then finally, understand what it means to post about religion and politics. You've got to understand up front that in doing so, you are risking 50% of your followers to be pissed at you and 50% to love you. Now, again, going back to love me or hate me, it's not that I'm saying don't do it. I'm saying you've got to understand what the outcome is going to be if you do it. Because again, you make the wrong post, or you make a legitimate post, but it's leaning to one of those two topics, religion or politics, you're going to get a rat's nest. It's going to explode. It's just a given. That's the sad fact of social media right now. So are you prepared for that? Do you understand how to deal with that? Do you understand the, do you know how to manage conversations, meaning muting people, blocking people, removing comments? Is that something you want to do, or is your philosophy to let everything stay and let all sides be heard? That's completely fine, but you have to understand that what that looks like to people coming in who might be new customers and going, oh my God, there's just turmoil on this post, and I don't want anything to do with this. I want to, I don't want to surround myself with negative. So understand all of these, the consequences of these actions before you take them. Because the last thing you want to do is learn about those consequences in the middle of a firestorm.
Well, thank you, Mike, for doing this. I'm glad to hear more about your background with Kiss. He's a great person to work with. I work with him on my own music, so a little endorsement there. Couple questions for you. Kiss and other iconic bands have these fan communities. They've really built these fan communities. Do you think businesses today see the value in doing that, or do you think there is a value in doing that?
First, yes, there's a definite value in it. People want to be part of a tribe. People want to be part of a group of people who have the same love and passion. You know, I'm a big Apple user. I love my Apple computers. I love hanging out with other Apple customers. It just, it's the same thing as hanging out with sports fans and theater fans and what you just love to get together with those people. So it's very important. And I think all businesses need to realize that they can build that. Every business, your brand, what is the driving force? It's not just how the product works or what it does, but what does it mean to people? And you can encourage them. Sometimes you can encourage them. Other times it's just a matter of actually just being observant enough to go, wow, they're actually kind of starting to form their own little group here. And that's kind of great because in the story of Kiss, that's how it happened. They're known for the Kiss Army. Back in 1975, a fan in Indiana, in Terre Haute, Indiana, wanted to hear Kiss on the radio. Radio wouldn't play it. So he and a bunch of his friends from high school went and surrounded the radio station until they started playing Kiss. They wrote letters and they wrote letters. Kiss got word of this. Kiss came to town, visited the radio station, gave this guy an honorary plaque on stage at the show for all of his efforts to support the band. But then the band's like, this is the Kiss Army. We can turn this into our fan club. And they did. And they've kind of stepped back and let the fans run it themselves. Yes, you can join the official army, but it's become more than just joining a club and having a membership card. It's just, in the case of Kiss, and you'll see this not just in Kiss, but other areas of entertainment, the fans get together. They have their conventions, their expos, their gatherings. They hang out for the weekend together. That's the sort of stuff that these tribes will do on your behalf. And you can choose to ignore that, or you can choose to embrace that. I would caution in embracing it, you don't want to come in so heavy-handed to take over and kick the fans out and run it the way you want to run it. Try and keep them involved in all of this, because again, they are the ones that keep it alive. They are the ones that will keep your tribe alive, maybe long after the business or the product is gone. They just love it so much, they're going to keep talking about it. So tribes, I like to call them tribes. Tribes are something that are really important for all businesses to think about.
So I've got one more question. For a lot of businesses, they need to have, when they start doing social media, they need to kind of decide on a tone and a personality for their brand, so they can be more engaging, right? So it's not just buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. What are your thoughts on ways that you can create and show personality in social media as a business?
It's a little more challenging in a business, but it's pretty much a mindset. I feel, in that I believe in a philosophy called the 80-20 rule, where 20% of what you post online can be the hard sell. Buy this, click that, do this, go here. 80% of your content should have nothing to do with selling a product. 80% of the content should be about you, who you are, what you're about, what you like, what you enjoy. Now, as a formal corporation and a business, sometimes that might be hard to envision. How do you do that? But maybe it's the CEO of the company taking the lead and becoming the personality. Maybe it's somebody else in the business. I mean, I'll date myself. I mean, I remember Dave from Wendy's. There's the guy who stepped out and he became the personality of that company. To this day, Wendy's has a very fun social media presence. They inject humor and they keep it light and fun. But you've got to look at it. It's hard to give a direct answer to that, because every company has to look at it. Are you a one-person operation? Are you 3 people? Is it 10,000 people? But you've got to try and inject that personality. Here's what it comes down to. Nobody's going to keep coming back to your social media if every post is just a sales message. They don't need that. I don't need that. If I want your product, I know where to get your product. I know when your new product's coming out. I love you and I support you. You don't need to keep selling me on it. I want to learn what your company means. What are you standing for? What will you stand up for? What will you stand up against? Bring me into the process of creating the product. Show me the production facility. Show me the people that are actually packing the envelopes and putting the packaging together. Show me who you are.
Thanks for the opportunity, Michael. This is great to hear. Curious about brand value. How do you measure the value of a brand? And then how do you measure the movement, whether you're making improvements in that brand value or if your activities are eroding brand value?
That's a tough question, because as a marketing person, we all love to have a very clear ROI. Are we making money on what we're doing? And brand is, and even social media to some extent, it's very hard to put a very clear, defined ROI on that. It is something that you as the brand owner are going to hopefully be paying attention to and have a feeling and an understanding when you see movements. Now, you can judge things like, there's plenty of websites out there that will monitor your brand for you, but they're just keyword searching. They're looking for your name, your company name, your brand, whatever it might be, and they're reporting back. Are you getting more mentions, less mentions? Are we seeing growth? Are we seeing negative talk? That will give you an idea if movement is happening, but it's going to be hard to put a value on what that means. Now, you can sit there and go, okay, well, while I'm seeing a growth in the mentions of my brand, I'm seeing a growth in sales. But you can't put a direct correlation to those, because you don't know if all of your other marketing efforts are hopefully impacting those sales as well. So in my view, it's more of always be aware of your brand more than anything. always be monitoring your brand, always know what's being said. That means, this is what I do. I set up things like Google News alerts, Twitter searches, anything along those lines, so I can always be alerted immediately to somebody saying something. So you can either jump in and join the good conversation, or jump in and take that potentially bad conversation offline and deal with it in a customer service capacity. So it's so, and I won't get into the long details, but years ago, I was subject to a lot of Twitter hate attacks. I was subject to impersonations. I was subject to a lot of stuff like that. And I got really versed in how to monitor my name so I could immediately see if the troll was attacking me again, and I could deal with it immediately. What I see a lot of companies doing is they don't monitor anything. They have no idea what's going on or being said, to the point where, and I think I might have mentioned this to Randy last week, there's a, with this whole shelter in place and restaurants and bars being closed, 3 months ago when California did that, I saw an ad on Facebook for a local bar saying, "Come on in, we're open, play trivia, we've got great crowds." And I'm like, no, you don't. You're closed. Who's running your Facebook for you that you're paying? You're literally paying for an ad to tell people this. Nobody answered that comment. A month later, more customers were commenting the same thing. Nobody responded. And still, this month, the ad is still running. And these comments are still there. So is that how you want your brand represented? That you totally ignore people who are trying to reach out to you? That you can we afford to waste money on ads when you're not even open for business and you may probably had to lay off your entire staff? I mean, those are things where monitoring what's going on with your brand is the most important thing in my mind.
Coming from the KISS Army in Palm Beach County, Florida, it's great hearing that story. It really is. The question is more about, your experiences, and you've been around so many different bands. I'm curious as to your definition of the success in discipline that KISS has, or even other bands, both successes and failures, and how you would define the discipline in the music industry that's been successful, as opposed to discipline in any other industry.
The biggest discipline, the biggest thing I took away from KISS versus many of the other artists I worked for is Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley were intimately involved in everything related to the band/brand. Everything that happened with the band's name, they were made aware of it. They were involved in an approval, a sign-off, a discussion. I've worked with other artists where the artist has no involvement. It's all handled by their manager. It's all handled by their personal assistant. If Gene Simmons wants to talk to you, he calls you himself. He picks up the phone. I mean, it's kind of a running joke amongst KISS fans, but he'll always, you'll always pick up the phone and he'll go, "Hello, this is Gene Simmons of the band KISS. May I speak to Drew?" That you sit here and go, this is a guy who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, been around for 50 years, a major international artist, and he's calling himself. He's not having his secretary do it. He's not having his assistant do it. He's not having the manager. No, he's doing it himself because he cares about his business. And I think that's the biggest thing that I really appreciated about KISS is if I had an issue, I just emailed Gene or I emailed Paul. They dealt with it directly. Now, they may delegate to somebody else at that point, but they always were involved.
Mike, thanks for taking the time with us today. Really good stuff. You talked earlier about love me or hate me, and I'm curious how, whether it's in social media or even face-to-face or groups of people, how do you respond to the hate or the negativity? How much energy is it worth giving to acknowledge it, understand it, and or respond to it, or is that just is it futile? Just curious your perspective there.
You know, my experience is most of the online hate never moves into the real world. Those people who are sitting there behind their keyboards typing that hate, if they were to meet you, they're not going to say the same thing. I think it's human nature that for the most part, all of us realize face to face, you don't act like that. When you're not face to face, people feel like they can get away with everything. So I don't worry too much about it in the real world. Online, you do have to sort of figure out, how do I draw that line of dealing with the stuff? Because you are 100% right. You don't want to get sucked into just a battle of words. Nobody's going to win, and all it's going to be is 100 posts of people bickering at each other. So, you know, I've taken the stance on some of my own properties where I'm just like, if there's any hate, if there's any yelling, if there's any of this, or this, these are the rules of participating in this discussion. If you break any of those rules, it's gone. The comment is just deleted. If you continue to push it, you will be blocked. You will not get second chances. You don't get warnings. You don't get a do-over. You don't get an explanation, because you don't have to do that. You know, at least in my view, I expect people to act like mature adults. Now, that's a big thing on the internet, but that's how I expect you to act.
Nick, I think, has something really along the same lines as well.
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a Rick and Morty fan, and I've been watching as they kind of have been approaching a certain kind of fan that kind of glorifies an aspect of the show they don't want to highlight for new fans. So they're trying to use the media to address fans that they see as exclusionary. They see those fans as a barrier to entry for new fans and appreciation, like inclusion for a wider fan base. I was curious if that's something that you've ever done in managing a brand for a band or any kind of a media personality, and if so, how did you do that?
Well, if I understand it, the question correctly, yes, especially when it comes to Kiss, is a great example. So this is a band that's been around 50 years, has had many different members outside of the two original guys, Gene and Paul, has worn makeup, taken makeup off, has many different styles of music. So frankly, their fan base, just by the very nature of what they've created and done over 50 years, is a very fractured fan base. And you have to understand that. So you will find that there's communities that have been built that are, we only like the original band when they wore makeup. And if you don't like anything else, if you like anything outside of that, you're not welcome here. That's fine. That's their prerogative to do that. And then when I try and build a community because I've got a podcast on Kiss, we love all eras. We love everything. We just love the band. But if you come in here and try and dominate the conversation and attack the people who agree differently with you, you're not welcome. We want this to be a safe, welcoming environment for everybody to come in and have discussions about what they love. So if we can't create that environment, you're not welcome. At the end of the day, you're not welcome. If all you want to do is disrupt everybody else, we don't have time for that. Now, you can go start your own environment. That's the great thing about social media. I tell people this all the time. If you don't like our, quote, rules, you are more than welcome to go start your own. If you don't like my podcast, if you don't like my opinions, you're more than welcome to go start your own community and do it however you want. You know, it's not about trying to alienate customers when I do that. It's just, I want to make sure the customers I got are feeling welcome and safe, I guess is a good word, that you can come here and discuss it without somebody coming in and going, no, that product sucks and you're an idiot for liking it. You know, no, that's not what this is about. If you can talk negative in a constructive way. That's the whole point. If you want to come in and say you disagree with my opinion because A, B, and C, I respect that, because we've all got our opinions, and the opinions are only right for us.
I like that. I'm curious, if you don't mind, I have a little follow-up question.
Sure.
So how does the brand manage? Does the brand like run various sub brands to say like, we have T-shirts that are focused on with makeup and without makeup, or is it?
Yeah. You know, in the case of KISS, they're proud of providing anything and everything when it comes to the products. So yeah, we've got stuff. You can buy a T-shirt if you love this album that nobody else likes. You can listen to this music. You can see these videos. We celebrate all of it. So as the brand, they're open to it. They're not turning their back on any of it. It's subset fan groups. And, you know, and again, that's fine. If that was what your memory was, if that's what was important to you, great. You're welcome to love that. But there's nothing gained by fan groups battling each other. You gain nothing from that. And in those cases, it's just like, come on, guys, just go walk away, go do what you want to do in your own world. This is how we do it here. And if you don't like it, we understand that. We're not trying to convince you. I guess that's what it comes down to. We're not trying to change anybody's mind. We just want to create a place where the people who love the brand can gather.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Have you ever had to navigate the train wreck where maybe that line got crossed? And I think about brands. Sometimes brands take stands, or Chantel brought up a Subway, and you know, and the person is so intertwined in the brand that something controversial they said creates the train wreck.
My first approach would be, you've got to be completely transparent. You've got to be completely open. I mean, you know, like in the case of Subway and Jared, you know, when Jared first got involved, nobody knew anything. Nobody was making any deliberate issues out of it. It's when you learned about it, how did you deal it? Did you try and bury it and ignore it? That's not being transparent and open to it. I think you've just got to come out and make a statement. You've got to stand behind your statement. And as those sorts of events really blow up, you know, you've got to stop and think, is there anything that you're gaining by constantly trying to fight every little fire that pops up? Are you trying to quell every little person, or just stand behind what you believe, why you did it, why things changed, and we've resolved it, we've addressed it, and we're moving forward? And stop looking back over it. I mean, you know, at this point, Subway doesn't deal with it anymore. They've moved past Jared. That's not anything they're dealing with anymore. And to some extent, as a customer, unless somebody reminds you of it, you've already forgotten about it. Unless you read an article popping up, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Boy, was that a disaster. But I got no problem walking into Subway right now.
All right. Well, I think this was awesome, Mike. I know I got a lot of notes out of this and great ideas out of this. I think others did as well.
Thank you. I
really appreciate it.
I enjoyed the talk. And again, you can find more about me at my website, michaelbrandvold.com.
Awesome. Well, I will get that to you. And thanks a lot, for
Thank
all
you.
you did today, for
Yes.
spending time with us. It was great.